Okay, City Clerk, are we ready to go?
I guess so.
Okay, it's still kind of muddy, but let's go. I'd like to apologize to everyone for the slight we were having. But at this time, I would like to call the virtual special city council meeting of Wednesday, May 27th, 2020 order. It is now about 8:03 p.m. If you would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, do you have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Having that this is a special meeting, we're going right into our old business of discussing the approval of ordinance 0320. As we are aware, the purpose of this ordinance was to actually have an public health officer to support the city as we move through this pandemic. As the little history, I won't go back to it all, but we're doing this to try to make sure that we provide every opportunity we can to keep our citizens safe. I would say that in having talked to the public health officer for the county, Dr. Carter, and then with other municipalities and others, they've recommended that municipalities do this. They found it to be very helpful in the cities being able to address any issues that come up with the pandemic, particularly with hotspots, but also it affords Dr. Carter and others someone to directly talk with within the city to address it from a medical perspective. Having said that, I would also like to say that in having talked, for example, with Mayor Moe from Laurel, theirs has been extremely successful. The one thing I would put out there as well is that this position, for example, in Laurel is a volunteer position. So it is not a paid position. So I think that we could look at doing something very similar to that when it comes to a cost and addressing that, of maybe even just giving a small stipend or something. But I think the model that the city of Laurel was using, which is successful for them and others, is to have it as a volunteer position. Having said that, I'm opening for anyone who would like to further discuss.
Yeah, so I just got off a meeting with the city's public safety committee. They had a lot of questions about this. I walked them through things as best as I could. It sounds like from the text of the ordinance tonight, all we're doing is giving ourselves the authority to appoint such a person. And we're not at this point laying out details about employment terms or anything like that. We're simply authorizing ourselves to be able to appoint such a person, and we can figure out kind of the details as we get feedback. If that's the case, I'm very happy proceeding tonight.
And that is the plan for us, to put that in motion and giving us, and know that by code, we don't have to be limited to it, but it doesn't take effect for 30 days. And then we can take as long as we need to try and do it. But we want to be as proactive as we can for the citizens in doing that.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Hey, this is Roxy. I've had a question.
Yeah.
In terms of moving forward, do we need to agree on the salary portion of that tonight, or is that something that we look at a later time, or what's the deal with the salary portion of it?
That is also something we as a council can discuss at that time as well. City I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, I was just asking a clarifying question. Clarifying question being that tonight we would just be discussing whether we're moving forward with the ideology of having this position, and we don't necessarily need to agree right now whether that person will be paid or not.
That's my feeling, and again, the reason I brought that up is I know that there was some concern before about it being a paid position and what that might cost and other things. And I think it was thought that the position, for example, in Laurel, was a paid position. But having talked with Mayor Moe, it was clearly stated that it's a volunteer position. So that leaves us that opportunity to be able to decide to do it that way as well.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you? And I understand that Laurel is the only municipality that has a public health officer?
No, I have been told that there are several others who are in process, and I can't call them out right now, but there's a couple who already have them. And on the municipality call that Dr. Carter had, he was encouraging and saying that other municipalities were looking at doing it as well.
And those are in Prince George's County?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and just want to make sure that everyone is aware that Laurel does touch two other counties besides Prince George's. It touches Howard and Anne Arundel. So it would seem, and it also has its own zoning authority. So it would seem that they would have a public health officer. And I would like to hear the other municipalities that are looking at that. It's unfortunate that you can't share that right now. My comment is that I don't believe this is something we need at this time, and taxpayer dollars are already being spent to the county for a public health officer, and as well as the state. So at this time, I don't believe this is something that the city of Bowie needs. It is a duplicative service. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I jump in with a quick question for staff?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff, if we were to recruit this position, is this something that we could possibly apply to the county for as far as tax differentials go?
Well,
No.
I've been informed that that would not be the case, sir.
So in that case, we're not actually duplicating a county service.
In answer to your question about the tax differential, the public safety officer will not be one of those items where we would get a reduction in our tax bill because we are providing that service.
Gotcha, okay. Because one of the reasons why I think this is so important is, as my colleague in District 2, DeFore Wolfley, will tell you, we've been struggling for a very long time now with the oversight gap that exists, in particular dealing with the very large number of care facilities that have opened shop in residential parts of the city, in particular in parts of Levitt, Bowie. And we've worked very closely with the county and with our state elected leaders trying to find solutions. But the short version is there just isn't an adequate level of oversight. There's not an adequate level of staffing when we deal with persistent challenges at a lot of these medical providing facilities that are opening up in growing numbers in Bowie. Our code compliance officers don't have the full extent of the authority they need to deal with issues. Neither does our police department always, because oftentimes the issues we're dealing with don't rise to the level of a warrant. And so this particular officer would be extremely helpful in closing gap and providing oversight in ways that we currently don't have the ability to do. And given, in particular, what the pandemic has exposed as being major challenges in a lot of care facilities, with 2/3 of the pandemic deaths happening in nursing homes, I think it's very clear that we do have a serious problem that goes beyond anecdote as far as the level of care that people are getting in care facilities. And I do think that it absolutely warrants, if we have the ability, to try and take steps to make sure that there is appropriate oversight at the local level.
Wait, I got one. Councilmember Estev, are you saying that the county is not doing what it's supposed to be doing? Councilmember Stev, did you hear me?
Sorry, I did not.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just asking, could you please clarify if you don't think the county is doing what they are supposed to be doing in regards to supporting the city during the pandemic?
It's not pandemic specific related, but the issue that we're having is we have a huge number of care facilities that are providing services to any number of folks, the elderly, people with intellectual or physical disabilities that are opening up shop in large parts of the city. And when we have reports of residents who are wandering out of the home at all hours of the night, of folks who were observed looking like they haven't bathed in weeks, people wandering onto other people's properties without obvious reason, again, often people with intellectual disabilities or people who are advanced in age. When we get a consistent number of complaints about these particular issues and appeal to the county for solutions, we have been instructed in the past that the only real answer is to call the county 311 number to be directed towards an appropriate official who can respond. Our residents have consistently told us that that's an inadequate solution, that oftentimes there isn't an obvious response and that facilities aren't changing their behavior. So that by giving the city the authority to have someone who would be able to actually provide a level of oversight that we currently can't, I think would certainly be appropriate, given the number of these facilities that exist in Bowie that are providing medical care, and given the number of complaints that we've received over the years about how some of these facilities, not all, but some of these facilities are operating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Mr. Mayor, this is
yes.
Councilman Wolfley. I just wanted to chime in and echo Councilman Estev's comments that he just made with regard to the concern about care facilities within our jurisdiction. I do know that's been an issue, and it's been an issue for my constituents as well as his. I also share Councilwoman Harrison's concerns about duplicative nature of services and unwarranted expense. And I think what we need to do is find a way to marry up both both sides of this coin, because I do think that we need to take full advantage of all of these services that the county affords. We're not in a position to start taking on a whole health infrastructure, but I do think it's important that the city have some way of passing ordinances and enforcing those ordinances in circumstances such as what we've seen in the past with our care facilities. At the same time, I don't particularly care to see the city become a major player in this arena. So I'm okay with moving forward with the understanding that my interest in this is to have a very limited scope of responsibility and certainly of expense as well in this area, and to be purely supportive and coordinative in matters that we've had with the COVID, because there's no way the city can really take much on under its own power. It needs to be part of a broader organized effort. But I do think there's room to work through some of these details as we move forward if this thing gets off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman.
Mr. Mayor, can I add one thing?
Yes, please, go right ahead, Councilman.
I think to everyone's point, including Councilwoman Harrison, Councilmember Wolfley, as well as Councilmember Esteve, I think that if in District 1 and District 2 we're seeing a need for just kind of this type of service where the Prince George's County is not providing it at the magnitude that we would like them to see, or that we're hearing from residents that that's just not what's happening, I think looking at a model where we have this, however it start off as a volunteer position or it start off as a significantly scaled down kind of position that works in hand with Dr. Carter over in Prince George's County, I think that's something that we might be able to explore initially, as opposed to diving in on the deep end and saying, hey, we're going to support this and we're going to pay X amount of dollars to this, when we don't necessarily know how or exactly it may function 100%. So I think looking at it from a, not necessarily trial perspective, but looking at it from the perspective of, hey, let's try this out. Let's probably not allocate so much money towards this and see how it works out, and have this person work alongside Prince George's County to make sure that we don't have duplicative services and that we are being able to assist District 1 and District 2, as well as the residents who feel like this is a need.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Anyone else with any comments at this time?
Yes, this is Councilmember Gardner. I like to make
Councilman Gardner.
Thank you. I like to make a suggestion that we lean closer on the county and the state, and seeing that our residents here in Bowie are getting what they're paying their tax dollar for. I want to echo in the words of Councilmember Harrison. She's absolutely correct. We need to lean on our county harder to provide the services. And I will say this, I had conversation about this with our state delegate, Geraldine Valentino Smith, and she says and agrees and said she felt that it was a horrible idea, being that we are paying for this already, and that the county is providing this service as well as the state. And I have to say, I really think that we need to be a little bit more, not a little bit, a lot more conservative when it comes to spending other people's money. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any other comments at this point? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve Ordinance 3-20.
It's been moved.
I'd like to second that.
It's been moved and properly second. If I could, at this time, let's call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend we get a roll call since everybody can't see everybody, and just for clarity and, openness.
That would be just fine. Thank you, Angela. Would you do a roll call vote for us, please, City Clerk?
Sure. Mayor Adams,
Yay.
Councilmember Gardner,
Nay.
Councilmember Harrison,
Nay.
Councilmember Estev,
Aye.
Councilmember Wolfley,
Aye.
Councilmember Boffo,
Aye.
Councilmember Ndebumadu.
Aye.
Okay, it's 5-2. Ayes have it.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Moving to old business item B, the fiscal year 21 budget ordinance 0220 and capital improvements resolution R2420. And at this time, we're looking for the adoption of the fiscal year 2021 budget and CIP. I open it to any discussions.
Mayor, if I can, this is Byron Matthews, the Finance Director.
Yes, good evening, Byron, and thank you for all you do. Go right.
Thank you. The City Manager proposed a $66,337,000 budget in Budget Ordinance 0220. We have a couple of adjustments that we need to bring to your attention. One is the police department on page 82 During the FY20 budget, the police department was supposed to hire a civilian evidence technician, but they were unable to fulfill that position this fiscal year. And what they would like to do is to move over the supplies and equipment that they were going to buy for that position into the 2021 budget. The increase is material supplies and minor equipment. It will take the number from $205,500 to $259,500. It includes $20,000 for evidence processing lab supplies and another $34,000 for lab equipment. And again, this is due to a staff vacancy. That would revise the general fund budget to $66,398,000. The second item is, and this was brought to the table by council on budget page 218, the accessibility improvements. Council requested to include additional analysis for the Harmel House and the Kent Hill Center. And staff has determined the cost of adding this analysis would be $7,000. That $7,000 would be funded from the general fund. So the increase to the capital project budget will go from $5,094,400 to $5,101,400. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Okay, at this time, are there any other concerns, questions? I would open.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Boafo.
Thank you. I'd like to make amendment to page 62, specifically under the objectives for the communications office for FY21. I'd like to add in the objectives for the communication office for a creation of a strategic digital communications plan.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other?
Well, okay.
City Manager, go ahead. Were you saying something?
Well, Mr. Mayor, yeah, I understand. We already have a communications plan, and in today's world, everything is digital, nothing's analog. So I need a clear definition as to what would be expected of us and what the product would be before, so that I can hold their staff accountable for whatever this is.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Well, City Manager, let me say that we appreciate the digital plan, the communications plan that you put together a couple years ago. I think it really addresses how strategically internal communication, but also our outward communication can go. What I'm looking for here is more specifically about how we can improve in the digital space, right? How we can grow our numbers both on the two major channels of Twitter and Facebook, how we can explore new options, what we can be doing for SEOs, what we can be doing as in terms of digital promotion. So it is similar to what your communication plan was. However, that addressed one piece of communications and didn't really talk about strategically how we can continue to move successfully into the digital space. I'm not necessarily sure if you're asking for details for budget, but just presented this.
Well, I appreciate that. What I need is that in writing. So in some specificity, so that I can sit down with the communications director and the professional staff to see, one, if it's something we can accomplish with the assets that we have, and if it's reachable from at this point. That's my position.
Okay. I believe we can do. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you, City Manager. I think what we can do at this time is look at doing that and then have that provided at a later date. We're not going to be able to do that tonight, of course. So I think he's just adding that an objective be added as a line item, and then we address the specifics on how to do that. Councilman,
Sir, can we make that objective tentative?
Cost.
Sir, can we make that objective? Can we?
Say something?
Yes, sir. Can we make that objective tentative until we can sit down and we see what a written depiction of what the council wants? Because right now, I don't know. I think maybe we may need consultants or something to help us here, but I need to see a statement saying a digital strategic plan doesn't really tell me much because the entire universe is digital now. But I need the specificity, so if we could make this a tentative objective until we get the document, and we're happy to work on it and try to get it done. We're.
Okay, but I believe what we're looking at now is, I believe from our previous conversations, to manager with, for example, the finance director, that we're actually looking at, because we couldn't plan anything really for the pandemic, not knowing where it would be, that we would be looking at doing a supplemental budget adjustment anyway in next fiscal year. So I think we can kind of include it now and then look at what if the cost would be, and take a chance to write that up and put that in now as a digital plan now, and then just address that. And if need be, we could circle back on that from any costs or anything we need to do.
I may add one piece here. Mr. City Manager, again, this is an objective that we're just adding in hopes that it can be done, and we can obviously talk offline more specifically about the details as an entire council, right? But a lot of our objectives are pretty vague, right? So I don't see a problem with again now then discussing the full council what we want to see moving into the future. And again, if we do believe that we at some point need to hire an outside consultant to help us with that, we can, as the mayor said, move with a budget ordinance to do that. But again, it's pretty vague, and it sits with kind of the ambiguity that already exists in a lot of our objectives for FY21, specifically in this department.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I made my position. We'll take direction however it comes. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, if I could jump in real quick on this.
I appreciate it. Go ahead, Councilman Esteve, I believe.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Boafo, I might suggest that in addition to the adding the objective, we should also schedule a council meeting in the near future where staff can update the new council on their current plan, and that'll give us an additional opportunity to talk through specific digital objectives we had as well. I think we can do that in addition to adding this objective, but that'll give us a formal opportunity to give staff more direction. So if you'd like to amend your motion to include the request that this be brought up at a near-term council meeting, I think that'll help move this along.
Yeah, Councilman, I actually think that's a fantastic idea. I do, however, notice that we do have a planning retreat in our fiscal year 21 side on the council side. So I do think this is one of the many things that we can discuss at that retreat. So I don't know if we necessarily need a separate meeting for that, but I do think at the strategic planning retreat that we do have in the budget, we can discuss that then.
That's absolutely true as well, for sure.
Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Mayor, Byron Matthews.
Yes, Mr. Finance Director.
Mayor, forgive me, but I forgot one of the items, so I apologize for that. On page 41, city rentals and user fees. Staff recommends changing the custodial fee from $30 per hour to $50 per hour to respond to the COVID epidemic, or pandemic, I'm sorry. And you'll find that on page 41. Our normal cleaning for our facilities is $30, but due to the pandemic, they're believing that they need to increase that to properly clean the facilities.
Okay.
Minor effect
Thank you,
on
Mr.
the,
Manager.
minor effect on the revenue, so we're not asking for a change in the projected revenues.
Okay, so the cost effect is negligible? Negligible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilman Boafo, going back to you, sir.
No, I just made a motion, so waiting for a second.
It's been moved that we add the strategic,
I'm happy to second that.
it's been moved and properly second. Any discussion? If not, call for the vote. If you could, City Clerk, would you do a roll call, please? Unfortunately, we're going to have to do all of these roll calls because we can't quite see each other in here.
Sure. Councilmember Ndebumalo,
Aye.
Councilmember Boffo,
Aye.
Councilmember Wolfley,
Aye.
Councilmember Esteves,
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner,
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison,
Aye.
Mayor Adams.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Unanimous vote.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, I mean, it wasn't necessary for a formal vote. It just was a four-person consensus. We've got the mission. Whenever I get the details, we'll take it on.
Thank you, City Manager. Moving on. The ayes have it, that carried. Just for the record. Any other comments, any other additions, changes anyone would like to recommend to the budget?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just want a point of clarification because I think we discussed this at some point during our budget work session. But City Manager, on page 74, I think some members have discussed kind of putting together an action plan specifically about attracting cutting edge businesses, tech companies, et cetera, et cetera. Did that pass? Is that in the budget?
Well, that was well, Mr. Boffo, that was one of the things I was going to bring up after we got through the budget, that the amended council poll you submitted with the dates of the 15th of June and then July end date 5 weeks later and coming back the 3rd of August, that has not received 4 votes on the poll yet. So it is not an action for us. Yes.
I think you may be confused as to what I'm saying. I'm specifically talking about the action that I believe, I could be wrong, that we took a couple weeks ago in budget work session, specifically for the economic development part of our budget, where we asked for a objective for FY21, outlining actionable objectives and what we can be doing as a city to be attracting cutting edge businesses, tech companies, and other major organizations to the city.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I believe that. John Henry, could you chime in on that one? Sorry, I misunderstood you.
Yes, sir. We added that. I'm looking back here at my email. And it's work with the county to bring computer science and technology business to Bowie. That was proposed to be added as budget objective number 6 for the economic development.
Sounds good. I'd like to amend that.
And to recap, I'm working without benefit of an updated copy here. Budget objective 5 would be maybe superseded already. It was to work with the Economic Development Committee regarding recovery from COVID. I think we're already well along on that. But there would now be 7 objectives under the economic development element.
Sounds good. And you did say an action plan, right? I think what we're looking for here is a document that kind of talks about what we can do.
We're already working with them, and as they're going to have the lead, we need to find out a little more about what they've got and see. It could result in an action plan. It could result in them saying, no, do it yourself. It gives us some work. It's open right now, so we can gather information about it once they're back to normal and can focus again on their attraction efforts.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilman Boafo?
Yeah, I have. I just want one point of clarification on the record. City manager, we may have spoken about this in our first budget work session, but as you may know, on page 12 and 13, when under the fiscal policies, what we see here is a dramatic drop-off in our fund balance around FY 2021. Could you explain that drop-off kind of entails, or Byron, Mr. Matthews, if you could explain that as well? And more importantly, with the changes that Mr. Matthews just expressed, does that prevent that drop-off from happening? How did we get to a point of a severe drop-off in FY 23 is what it looks like?
Good evening. On page 12, we show you the fund balance. And as you can tell, our revenues, our expenditures are outpacing our revenues. And the correction to that is to increase our property taxes. We have not increased our property taxes in 11 years. The other side of that coin is to reduce services so that we cut down the amount of the expenditure growth. But we have, we proposed a tax increase last year, and that was in 19, excuse me, thank you, in 19, and that was denied. So we've kind of gotten off track to what was proposed and what was agreed upon. So the solution is to increase the property taxes and basically follow the program.
Clarification: has city staff been working on anything that allows us to increase, whether that's the tax base in some unique way without actually raising taxes? I don't think that's...
Well, let me take this. Well, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I think I understand what you're saying. We have received no assignment from the City Council to develop some plan to find an alternate revenue source. In local government, there are two ways you get money. You get money from property taxes and or sales tax or reducing services. That's one of the two things. It's really not a complicated experience. And 2 years ago, we were supposed to get a 3-cent increase. We did not. As a result, there's a $2.4 million per year less in our fund balance. But as life goes on, and there are increases in services, we are required to, we have to pay people. In order to keep people, we have to pay a decent wage, provide merits, and of course, there's always inflation. So those are the things that affect any local government budget in public finance, and with the focus on that, because we're limited. We get very little from sales taxes. We get some, but not very much. But we have to, and I'm glad we brought this up, because if some action isn't taken, then within 2 years, we're going to either have to have a drastic increase in the millage rate, or have a equally drastic decrease in services to keep up with our expenditures. And right now, and that's probably happen in 2 years, unless we increase revenues.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. I think we can, as a council, discuss more at our planning retreat. I just want to kind of also just capture the history here, right? I mean, this is a dramatic drop off from FY, it looks like 1920 to 23. It's pretty a steep curve down. Mr. Matthews, could you explain, I mean, what, again, just for new members especially, what is the kind of the biggest expense here? How did we go from a trend line upward to such a stark decline over what it looks like the last, since starting in FY12?
I'll just have to repeat what the city manager has just pointed out. 60% of our cost is salaries and benefits. We are a people-driven city. The increases, as we see them, keeping up with the cost of living increase, keeping up with inflation, those drivers continue to grow. And unless we have a major reduction in the services that we're providing, those expenditures will continue to grow. They are outpacing our revenues. Now, you have to understand that historically, the council has taken the position not to increase taxes because we had a significant fund balance. And they did that for many years. And now we're at the point where the fund balance is not so significant.
And moreover, though, if you look at past budget documents, you'll see that 4 or 5 years ago, this was predicted, this drop-off. And one of the reasons why it's so steep, it's rather simple math, is that in 2 years ago, we did not have the funded, we did not get a tax increase, so we had to take more from the fund balance, but the whole time, the services go up. We have a police department that's worth $14 million. That technically, as a public administrator, I can attest to the fact that in Bowie never paid for that police department. When the police department was established, it was established on the premise that there would be a tax increase to pay for that additional services. And the most expensive department that we have is the police department. And it's like that all over. It's not a knock on them, but body cameras, all the equipment, weapons, cars, and communication systems. And the city has never paid for that. And it's coming home to roost, if I can use that old Southern terminology, next year, in 2 years, the way we predicted 5 years ago.
Well, thank you, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, City Manager.
That's the end of my questioning. But I do think that this is an issue that we will have to discuss at some point in our planning retreat to figure out how.
Well, we hope so. Staff we're looking forward to a dialogue and direction from the council as to how we deal with this situation down the line. It's completely up to the city council to manage and pass that budget.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Boafo. Any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I got a couple quick things.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman Estep.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So first, real quick, in this year's budget, we do not have a provision for the city's Arts and Heritage Festival. I spoke to the festival organizers, and that event is being pushed back until next year, so 2021. However, they have sent us a detailed delineation of everything related to getting that festival restarted they believe they will need. That's been shared with the whole council. What they are looking to do is to get these festivals restarted. This is one of several steps that are necessary for Old Bowie to achieve arts and entertainment designation with the state. These are festivals that used to happen. They were put on by several folks who have unfortunately since deceased or moved away, and they simply are looking to get it restarted. But the first year, they're going to need a little bit of help. And so what they have asked for is for the city to authorize up to, won't likely be the full amount, but authorize up to $30,000 to cover all the various sundry expenses related to getting this festival kicked off next year. And I would like that we include those funds in this year's budget. They can come out of the general fund balance, whatever the case we need to make it happen. But I would like that the city staff be authorized to expend up to $30,000 in this coming fiscal year related to the Arts and Heritage Festival.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded that we increase a line item providing up to $30,000 for the Arts Festival coming from the general fund. Discussion, hearing none, call for the vote. City Clerk.
Councilmember Ndebumalo. Councilmember Ndebumalo.
Aye.
Councilmember Boffel.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolfley.
Abstain.
Councilmember Stev.
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner.
Aye.
Councilmember Harrison.
Aye.
Mayor Adams.
Aye.
Okay, we've got 6 ayes and 1 abstain.
Okay, motion carries. And then, Mr. Mayor, I just had one additional item for this coming year's budget. Staff, I wanted to inquire, so the city council has canceled its contract with Costello, as we know. But moving forward, my concern is about the functionality of the existing rink. We've heard now for quite some time that the existing ice rink is, facing disrepair in the very near future. And I think the word that staff has used with us is, catastrophic failure, i.e. we can no longer use that building more or less at any time. My concern is, this body is now talking about next steps it wants to take as far as RFPs to try and get a new facility potentially built with a private partner. And I'm glad we're taking those steps. But I wanted to inquire about, what are the potential costs we are facing with the current rink that we may have to incur if there is some sort of problem? What kind of money do we need available to address that? Because I want to make sure that that is included in some way, that there's some provision made for that in this coming year's budget in case there's an emergency repair we have to make and we don't have the money authorized to do it.
Sally, are you out there? You can chime in on this. I've looked at the budget, just to get us started. In the current budget, there are approximately $158,000 that could be one way or another used directed toward maintenance of this facility. And that has been successful in the past. However, we don't know what's going to happen with this facility in the next month. It's certainly very poor condition at best. Sally, you're out there?
Yes, sir, I am. So you've asked us to look at entering into some type of a public-private partnership to continue that operation. So that's something that we're working on, that documentation right now. You also mentioned earlier that you're looking to perhaps do a supplemental budget towards the fall. So I think that would be perhaps a place to put additional funds in if we needed it.
Gotcha. So Ms. Hine, you're saying there's a supplemental budget process in the fall that might be appropriate to deal with this? My concern is, hypothetically, let's say that there's a refrigeration issue, breakdown of some sort in August, and we need $1.5 million to address that. Where's that money going to come from right now?
I'll answer that. Sir, presently, the only place that money could come from is our fund balance. And if such an event occurs, I would bring it back to the council, and with whatever the cost is to repair it, and see if the council wants to spend that kind of money on this building. But it would have to come from our fund balance. There's no other source. And it would have to, be it a budget amendment, or even if it was in the budget, if it was $500,000 in the budget and I had a $400,000 expense, I'd have to bring it back to you before I could spend that kind of money anyway. So it's going to be, course, we were making an assessment as the cost effectiveness of the repair. We'd have to in the recommendation.
So our biggest concern would be things like compressors in the building, and currently those are under warranty. So it wouldn't be a catastrophic type of cost to repair one of those, or two of those.
Gotcha. So the things most likely to go wrong with the building are under warranty or things that we can pretty much take care of. And in the event of like severe catastrophic failure, you know, we have the ample reserve money available from our fund balance to be able to address those.
I think the city manager addressed that, in terms of a catastrophic failure, like a roof caving in or some huge issue. But in terms of the regular maintenance, we have an excellent staff down there, and they keep on top of these things and do periodic and routine maintenance. So we're in the process right now of working with our compressors on the ice. So we don't anticipate an immediate problem with any of our major systems in there.
Okay, that's good to know. Because what I was going to suggest is, Mr. Lott, how much of the $24 million that we acquired in bonds is currently available to us? Last we heard that was sitting in an account, essentially collecting interest. How much of that remains at this point? The money that was originally allocated for the new ice rink facility.
We're checking, right, that figure just online right now. Stand by, please.
I appreciate it.
Can I chime in while we're checking that? This is just a follow-up question,
Yeah.
Councilman Steps. As we're going
Councilman. I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilman Blossom.
As we're going through a procurement process, one of the things I see is that we're specifically focusing on the Maryland Exchange. Mr. Lott, is there a reason why we can't expand scope?
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean. I couldn't hear some of what you said. Please, one more time.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, proceed.
So as we're exploring RFP proposals to come in, one of the things that I saw in our email chain is that we're specifically looking at the Maryland Exchange in terms of procurement. Is there a reason why that scope can't be expanded?
Mr. Broffa, so you're asking if an RFP can be advertised somewhere other than the eMaryland marketplace?
Correct.
Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, and I apologize, well, staff's still looking for that one answer to my last question. Did we get any comments on the budget tonight? Any public comments?
Tonight's meeting is not open for comments. It's the public hearings were closed for the budget were held on April 13th and May 4th. So there's no public hearing for tonight.
Just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. If we haven't gotten that number just yet, Councilman Esteve, you mind if we move forward and then just come back once they get the number for you?
Sure. So I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. All I was going to suggest was we could, if we wanted to vote to authorize that the remaining funds be dedicated to dealing with issues at the existing ice rink, right? Major structural repairs, anything like that that might come up. That's why I was hoping for staff to be able to answer that question to see if that even makes sense. You know, if the major issues that we're concerned about at the rink are under warranty, and we're confident that we have the reserve funds necessary to address anything catastrophic that comes up, then that's less of a pressing issue, but I just wanted to inquire about that.
Well,
Okay,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
I'm sorry, is that for you, Councilman, before? If so, please
Yes,
go
it
right
is.
ahead.
Thank you. I would just say that I think that the council, I think, is been clear in its commitment to providing for ongoing needs for the existing facility, and that should be no different. I don't know that setting aside money for that specific unknown, which, imponderable, that may never happen, makes sense at the moment. But I do think, particularly if we're going into a public-private arrangement, or if there's another solution as well. But I do think we should all stand committed to ensuring that we will maintain the facility and the services we've been providing. And I do think that the commentary about the infrastructure is under warranty. We have had it, in such a condition for some time, under warranty, that is. So I'm pretty comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman, and I agree with your take there.
Mr. Mayor, just for a point of clarification, the way, when you look at the way the bonds were advertised, they were advertised specifically for the ice rink. And so we have to have a separate action down the line where the council, when we come back with a separate ordinance specifically transferring that mission, that money's from the ice rink to something else. And that has to occur at another time. Now, it's my understanding, I don't have clear guidance as to what that money is to be spent for. Mr. Matthews is having difficulty locating it. Right now we had a $21 million project that, we can do some simple math and we can probably subtract $6 to $8 million from that. But until we can find out exactly what that number is and come and present it to you in an ordinance to repurpose the money, we'd rather not try to do that tonight. We do have enough money in the budget, $158,000, and there are fungible accounts within the budget where we can, if you all are familiar with that term, that if some issue comes up, we can handle it. I suspect that for the next 2 or 3 months, we could handle anything that comes up. If a catastrophic event occurs, it would, like the roof or the flooring or something becomes unusable, even if we wanted to repair it, it would still shut down the ice rink while we dealt with the repairs or renovations anyway. But I think for the next 3 to 4 months, we should be able to manage any operational issues, for $2,000 to $3,000 to $4,000, especially since a good part of our operations is a warranty, until there is another situation. And of course, this is why we were trying to replace this facility. And by that time, if we're given the go-ahead, we could have the RFP process proceeded, and or you all will have an opportunity to make a decision whether you want to continue to operate the current ice rink or have somebody else do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, City Manager. That's appreciated. Okay, moving on. Any other budget questions or concerns from any of the members of the council?
Yes, I'd like to make a comment. Councilmember Gardner.
Go ahead. Is it Councilman Gardner?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Mr. Matthews, if you may. Mr. Matthews, I will say tonight I did support the $30,000 for the Heritage Trail. The Heritage Park, the festival, the Arts and Festival. Yes, okay. Question for you. When the monies were borrowed for the ice plats, did we, of course, I'm asking this because I want to ask. When the city borrowed the monies for the ice plats, the repayment of those monies were going to service that debt were coming from the ice plats, correct?
In addition to the general revenues of the city, yes.
Okay, so being that we're not building an ice plats and we've basically spent the money and are going to continue to spend the money, how do we look at paying back those monies? What facility, because we won't have a facility, meaning an ice plats, that could generate monies to cover that, service that debt. Where is that going to leave us?
Well, Councilman, that's a good question. It's going to be coming from your general revenues. citywide, mostly from your real estate taxes, income taxes, and those other user fees that makes up the total revenue source for the city.
So we no longer have an ICEplex, but we have this debt to serve, and meaning that we have less of a facility or less of a means of servicing or paying our bills. Basically, to sum it up in a nutshell, 2 household income now reduced to 1 household income, but yet the cost of living remains the same, if not going up. So that's where we are, correct?
Well, I can help you out, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. City Manager. I'm sorry.
I'll chime in and help him out here.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, I just was asking this finance director, if you don't mind, Mr. City Manager, because
Go ahead.
Yeah, because I want to hear it from a finance expert to say, no disrespect to you, Mr. City Manager, but.
Councilman Gardner, you are absolutely right. The projected revenues from the ICEplex would have helped offset some of the costs of the debt service, but we're not going to have that now. So what we're looking at is what the ice rink normally generates in revenue, which is about $700,000 in revenue. That revenue plus your general fund revenue, your property tax, income tax, your user fees will now be servicing that debt.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you another question because you're the expert, Mr. Matthews. 2 sheets of ice would have generated, I'm asking because I don't know, because only by what you all presented, 2 sheets of ice would have generated more income than the current 1 sheet facility?
Councilman Gardner, I wish I could give you the numbers on that. Mm-hmm. That was all done by the consultant. The finance department didn't play a role in that assessment.
What were their determination? What was their outcome from it?
Can I give that question to Sally Hines?
Yes, Ms. Hines, if you could.
Well, I'm going to have to say that I don't have that information, but it was in the 2013 analysis that 2013 is correct. They had a pro forma which gave us all of the numbers and how many years it would take us to cover our operating costs. I don't know that it was ever intended to pay off the cost of the loan that was taken, though.
But it was much greater at the repayment on the 2 sheets of ice for that $21 million that we borrow as opposed to the current 1 sheet of ice, correct?
Well, certainly 2 sheets of ice would have more revenue, certainly.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Hines. Thank you. You're always. So,
pardon me, may I also?
Before?
Mr. Gardner, I might be able to help with your question. To Ms. Hines' point, the revenue associated with the services that we would have had at the 2 rink arena would never have paid for the operating expenses, and therefore it would never have covered any of the bond money. So the expectation was that it might cover optimistically 90% of operating expenses, but it could be as low as 60. But it was not going to pay for the actual bond debt service. So there is no offset associated with that. So by not having the ice rink, we're still in the same position which we were before, which was footing the bill.
I think the number.
Well, I'll say
the number was 80. The pro forma told us we would recover approximately 80 to 90% in a 2 to 3 year period of the operating cost, which is higher than the 70% that we're currently covering.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms. Hahn, you said that the pro forma gave us close to 90% return on the 2 sheets of ice over, I'm sorry.
I believe it was 80 to 90%. in a 2 to 3 year time frame. At the first year, you're not going to do that, but in 2 to 3 years, you would cover about 80 to 90% of the operating cost. That was not the construction cost of the facility.
Okay. Oh, I'm so, Mr. Matthews, could you chime? I'm sorry, Mr. Matthews, you were saying something.
Yes, that's strictly operating cost. That did not include the cost of the debt.
The cost of servicing the debt.
Yes.
Okay, and that is where I am, and where I'm really concerned is that we have a debt to serve, and we have no structure to service that debt with. And I know tonight, colleagues, I did support the Heritage Arts Festivals, having made a commitment to a friend and the community that I would support that. I did. But going forward tonight, I'll just going to be polite and starting saying this early up front now. I can't support spending a single dime of our taxpayer dollars because we're in a really bad shape. We have to service a debt with no amenities. And even once the basketball courts are built at that same location on Church Road, the debt of those courts, the monies that courts generate nowhere compared to that of ICE. And we have the monies for courts should have been borrowed for courts. The monies for ICE are to be borrowed for ICE. This is why when we elect to borrow money, they determine what the use of those monies are going to be to determine if we are in a place to repay those monies. And currently, we're not in a healthy place to repay those monies. And I'm going to be after that commitment to Mr. Kusan and his group for the Heritage Festival. I'm going to be a no across the board on everything else. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Council.
May I ask a clarifying question? Because I think we just went down this journey, so there are some things that I'd like to understand just really quickly. Promise won't take up a lot of time. So within this last banter back and forth, we just talked about the debt that we're left, that we have to service. Mr. Matthews and Ms. Hines, can you please help me understand just a little bit? I think I'm not understanding fully. The ICE arena, in terms of what the projections are only projected to recuperate a certain percentage of the operating cost, not the construction cost, which is seen as debt. Is that correct?
So Byron, I'd have to ask for your help. I'm sorry, Councilwoman, you're breaking up.
Excuse me, Councilwoman, could you repeat your question? I didn't hear it clearly.
Yeah. Of course. Just make sure that you're muted in the room, because I think that's where the feedback might be coming from. So based off of what just happened, just the conversation that you just had back and forth, there's one portion of it. You have the operating cost, and then you have the actual debt of the construction, correct? So moving forward, based off of your projections, the percentage that we were going to recuperate was only towards operating costs, not actual construction costs. I think that's what I just heard. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it has nothing to really do with the debt. That's right, right?
That would be correct. The debt would be separate from the annual operating costs.
Okay, thank you. Then also for the fund balance, in terms of basically what the city manager said earlier in today's meeting, where he said, fund balance is projected to decline over the next couple of years, and that was kind of something that was already projected prior to this council coming in. That is what it is, correct? Am I misunderstanding? Does that have any association with the ice rink, or that's just the fund balance has been projected to decline and it's been projected for a long time?
The fund balance, Councilwoman, the fund balance has been declining over time because of the position that the previous council took by not raising the taxes. The thing that you have to understand with the ICE arena is, number one, and let me just give you some history. The ice arena at one time was an enterprise fund. It never generated enough revenue to cover its expenses. So the ice arena was folded into general government. Now realize all of our sports activities do not cover their cost. That's just the nature of providing a service.
Mr. Patton, I just want to make sure you understand. I'm not suggesting that it does. I'm just trying to understand, based off of the conversation that you and some other council members are having back and forth, what the correlation between the actual debt that needs to be repaid on the actual bond and the operating costs and the fund balance, as the fund balance stands separately, not as it relates to the ice skating arena, because it really doesn't relate based off of what I'm hearing. So I'm not insinuating that I'm not aware of history. I'm aware, I've done my research, watched all the videos, pretty sound there. I understand that it operates at a declining revenue. I understand what Allen Ponce operates at, what the revenue is that's declining there. I get it across the board on city services, got it. So what I was trying to understand was the correlation between the projected decline on the fund balance that has been happening for the last couple of years, and basically the emphasis that has been drawn around that in relation to the ice skating rink. That is really what I was trying to understand. And it looks like the operating cost and the debt service are two separate things that don't correlate. And that's what my understanding was trying to get to.
No, that's incorrect, Councilwoman. The debt service is an operating cost.
Okay, so what you and Sally just said was two different things. So can you please clarify?
She was talking about the revenue specifically and the expenditures specifically dealing with the day-to-day operations for the ice arena. Normally, the debt service is handled in a non-departmental account, which is separate from the ice arena. It is still an operating account, but it is not included in the ice arena departmental budget.
Gotcha, understood. That's basically what you just said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. Thank you, Councilwoman. Is there any other items that would like to be presented regarding the budget from any of the other council members? Hearing none, to move.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt the proposed fiscal 2021 budget.
Second.
With the amendments discussed.
Council member, can I ask one question before we move on of the city finance director, please? Not to interrupt, but really quick. Well, let's just go with it. It's been moved. I'll wait on a second.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Estep, can you repeat your motion? I didn't quite make it out.
Yes, I'd like to move that we adopt the fiscal 2021 proposed budget with the amendments discussed tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was seconded by?
By me, sir.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second. I would like to ask, as part of a discussion, just one question of the finance director. And Mr. Matthews.
Yes,
quick,
yes, sir.
On the contingency line items, and I want to thank you for providing that information to the council now. For the general government general fund, the contingencies line item, it seems like the most that we spent and up to in 2019 was just 113, almost 114K. But we have a contingency that's been running about 300K. I'm wondering, is there any real impact if we were to drop that down and make it by 10% roughly increase over what it's been and put that at 125K versus the 300K? And then the same thing on the water and sewer fund contingencies. In 2018, that was 0, and then last year it was only $1,049. And we currently have it at 100K. And I was wondering if, would it be a major impact? We just moved that down to 5K.
Mr. Mayor, I would not agree to move the contingency reserves in each fund. The $300,000 is used when it's needed. Sometimes it's not needed. Other times it is. We have seen over the last 15 years that the $300,000 for the contingency fund for the general fund and $100,000 for the water and sewer fund, those monies are needed at the end of the year. What you don't see in the expenditure number is that we also use those two accounts to help us balance the funds at the end of the year if that's needed. There are sometimes overages in certain line items, and we will be bringing you a transfer resolution as we do annually on our next council meeting so that you can see what those types of movements of monies are made at the end of the year to balance the budget.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Matthews. And in that case, I think we'll leave those contingencies as they are. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion? If not, was that my own echo? I believe so. I'll call for the vote. If you could, City Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Mayor Adams?
Aye.
Councilmember Gardner?
Nay.
Councilmember Harrison?
Nay.
Councilmember Estev?
Aye.
Councilmember Wolfley?
Aye.
Councilmember Boffel?
Aye.
Councilmember Ndebumadu?
Aye.
The ayes have it, 5-2.
Motion carries. Thank you. Mr.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of clarifying questions for the staff regarding other issues we discussed. If I could just ask them quickly. With regard to the, thank you, sir. With regard to the public health officer and the ordinance which was passed tonight, is there any assignment to the staff with regard to this person? Or is that something you and the Council of Planning handle yourself?
I think at this point, the council, we will talk amongst ourselves to make sure how we want to move forward exactly with that. But that was a good question. But we'll discuss that first and then give direction to city staff, well, to yourself as we see it.
Beg pardon? Go ahead. With regard to the action that was sent to you and you all in the poll that I inadvertently mentioned earlier, that only had 3 votes, is this still an action that the council wants us to do? We've done some preliminary research, but we have not taken off on this action in earnest because it does not have the council's endorsement yet. Is that something we should wait on or what?
This is related to the RFP.
Yeah, right. The RFP is what I'm talking about. The amended RFP.
Where do the votes currently stand? Who has voted yes so far?
Well done.
All right, let me get my paper out. Hold on 1 second.
To save people the difficulties, I will be in a position to further review this next week, but I have not been able to do so recently.
As of right now, I just have Councilmember Ndebumadu, Boafo, and Mayor Adams.
Oh, I will give it a 4th vote.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's what I wanted, some clarity. We'll take the mission as it was depicted in the the council poll that I will to send out. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Are there
Mr.
any
Mayor,
other?
move to adjourn.
It's been
Second.
moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. I'd like to, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I hear anything from anyone?
I think it was unanimous, sir.
Unanimous, I think.
What was the question?
I said I think it was unanimous.
Yes, it was. And I was saying thank you to everyone. And then I didn't hear
Thank
anything.
you.
No response?
Have a great night, team.
All right, thank you,
Hey,
everybody.
everyone, please have a good night. And thank you for all your support. City manager, city staff, as always, thank you so very much for your efforts and your time. City clerk, we do appreciate you as well. And as I said, all the city staff, please stay safe. Thank you, and we will see you Monday. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.